All right, I am here. Sarah Bendrick was here. How are you doing? How is the weather in California currently?
Oh, it's lovely. A good 70s. It's like November. No, it's December. What is today? 3rd. Yeah,
Already.
70 degrees. It's nice.
Yeah. I got a wealth of stuff that I would love to get into. Um, the Owner and operator of Sarita Landscaping Design.
hmm
And if we were to dial the clock back, at what point in time did you sort of decide that landscaping is what you wanted to do in life? Was there kind of like a slow evolution to it, or?
Um, it was. I didn't know what I wanted to study in college, and I was paying for college myself. So I was like, okay, I don't want to go and like just get something generic and like flounder through college. So I did community college, and I started like looking up different flyers or different like programs that colleges had, and there was one that said landscape architecture, and I'm like, what is that? And I read it, and I'm like, that's it. I knew it, and then I just like went through and found all the schools that had that, and that's when I got into landscaping.
Okay, all right. So you didn't have any previous experience in it prior to?
No, I like the idea that it combines like creativity with science as well as just being outdoors. So I was like, hell yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds good to me.
I agree 100%. Years and years ago, when I was in high school, I worked for a landscape architect. And gosh,
Oh,
if I
you
look
did?
back, yeah, yeah. Shout out to Rob Furch and Meridian Nursery. As I'm on the air, yeah, I did that all through high school, and I absolutely loved it. I just loved being outside all the time and getting to work on all that kind of stuff. And um, unfortunately, the difference between California and here in the Midwest is that landscaping is very seasonal here. Pretty much
Oh,
end of October through early April, it's just completely shut down. And so once I got out of high school, I'm like, okay, I need a 12-month a year job. So unfortunately I had to move on from that. But yeah, absolutely loved it. It was always a lot of fun. Um,
yeah, it's a really great job.
oh, it really is. It really is. And especially, gosh, I'd imagine being there in California, Southern California, where it's a 12-month out of the year gig. It's probably constantly moving, constantly going. There's always something new to do.
Well, there's always we can grow a lot out here because of our climate. We can grow a lot more species and types of plants than you might be able to in another area. I mean, add water,
Yeah.
minus the water factor. We can do anything. Just import some water, please. Um, but yeah, it's totally it's busy usually all year, but we do have seasonality to it too. Like the winter in like January, February is typically slow, and then once spring comes, everybody's like, "Oh, let's do the landscape." And I'm like, "You should have called me in December. We would have been ready." Now you're booked out till like end of summer. Yeah.
Yeah, that always happens when people don't think about it in the last minute. They're like, "Oh yeah, let's get this done," and then everybody's booked up forever. I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Oh yeah, totally.
So the interesting thing to me anyway is that, so from what I understand, and of course by all means we're talking about you. So if you have to correct me something about you, then by all means do it. But from what I read, is you were not very long into operating your own landscape design company when you got involved with DIY Network. What
Yeah,
kind?
so go ahead.
No, go right. I was just going to ask what kind of process is that like? How does that even begin?
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It's kind of like, what? It just comes out of nowhere. You're like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do this. I was working for another company doing design build, and then I started to look to go on my own. And during that search, I came across an email in a newsletter saying like DIY is looking for a landscape expert, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I feel pretty good about like what I do for my job. So I'm just gonna send them a little email here, and then they're like, cool, can you send us like your portfolio and like photos of you and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay. And I sent it, and then they called me. I'm like, this is how this works. This is odd. I didn't think I'd even hear back. um, and then they ended up asking me to send out these videos, but I was still working my other job. And at this point, like, I wasn't filming or recording anything. I was living like a normal human being. And now I'm this social media person that records like everything. But back then I was like, what do I like? guess I'll use my computer and like let me push record and I'll stand in front of it. And so it was all very new to me. And I did some simple videos and sent that off like after work. And then it was the fall, I think, or no, it was like December that all of this was happening. And I was trying to fit in these videos before after work, but it was like pitch black. And luckily I had a lovely friend and her daughter who agreed to be in this mock-up video with me, and basically at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I had another friend hold the camera. And I'm like, thank God. Thank you, Jenny and Emma.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, come on, like they were so cool to come out and like help me like be in my video so it could feel more natural than just me.
Mhm.
And I sent that off, and then they're like, we want you to meet with the producer in LA. And I was like, whoa, like this is like
Ooh.
a week and a half ago of making contact with you guys. Like this is nuts. And then did that, and then they sent the video. I went down to LA, met the producers, and I didn't know what I was doing, but they basically had a camera guy and like these homeowners. They were real homeowners, but they were just kind of like go, and I was like, well, I'll just do what I kind of do for my job, which is like, hey, what do you guys want to do?
Mhm.
Let's do a pergola. And they took all that footage, sent it off to the network, and then the board of directors or whatever just went through all the applicants, and I was lucky enough that all 12 of them had selected me to host.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty quick process. Jeez.
Well, it's always hurry up and wait. So that
Oh.
just happened to go fast. But now that I've been in television for a long time, like I don't even get excited about things. They're like, oh, like you pretty much guaranteed this spot. Like you're the first person in this. I'm like, okay, when the money's in my hand, I'll get excited. Because so many things can kind of fall through. Like you definitely need like a thick skin. And I think it's always been important to me that I run my real job first.
Mhm.
And I have my company set up in a way that it's just me. I'm the only employee. So like when I'm not doing a show, which is most of the time, I'm running my business. But if I did get an opportunity to do a show that I wanted to do, I could be like, okay, closing down. I'm going to go travel and do this show and pick back up. So you
Oh,
can be
okay.
flexible for things like that. Oftentimes, I'll still have like a client or two that floats in between while I'm doing the show, like
Mhm.
designing remotely. But I'm not running my company like I would be full time.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not like you have a staff and you've just got to tell everybody, okay, keep this thing running
I
while I'm
mean,
gone.
I have had employees in the past. I feel like just at this point, I like the flexibility and freedom that I have to kind of bounce around, hashtag commitment phobe, and and be able to kind of, like I have no dependents. I'm not married. Like I, I can, I have a lot of flexibility right now, and I feel like if I did set my company up in that way where I have a lot of employees and this and that, my job would be more managing all that and keeping it running, and that's really doesn't sound as exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah, especially because then their employees, their sort of livelihood depends upon what work you have
That's
for them, and
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So at this point, I work as a designer and a builder, and I either build projects that I design under my license with subcontractors, or sometimes I'll design things and just pass them on to other contractors, or I'll collaborate and join their team and project manage. So
Oh, okay, that's really cool. So the show that you're currently doing now, which is Law and Order, with Chris Lambton, which is a great show, by the way.
hey,
My daughter and I were just watching an episode of it yesterday, and
oh, fun.
she was absolutely thrilled to death that you were going to be on. But it's past her bedtime here in Illinois, so she's in bed in the wall behind me right now. So,
Oh, what a sweetheart.
but so a question like that, just sort of like a behind the scenes thing. How much are you guys involved in that process prior to filming in terms of like, do you have any say in like selecting the house? Or I mean, obviously you're probably doing a lot of those design elements prior to actually showing up to film, right?
Each show kind of depends, and I'm sure there's some stuff I shouldn't share and some that I should, but ultimately it just depends. Like the reality of it is that there's no way that you can be a full-time host and a full-time designer builder on television because
Mhm.
the timelines are so quick. Like you just physically can't be in enough places. And so actually co-hosting is wonderful because while Chris is on camera, I can be actually doing something else and then we swap. So co-hosting is actually quite great. Where my last show, I was the sole person. And we would work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I would just be completely exhausted by the end of the day.
Mm.
Um, and so I do feel like it's a better balance when you can co-host.
Yeah.
But ultimately, people apply to be on the show, and the production company usually selects the homes that are going to be on there. And after they select them, that's where Chris and I would get involved and take a look at the project and what the homeowners want and what opportunities we saw with the budget. So, and then we give our input, we give ideas. Oftentimes I was in San Diego when they were casting, and they would just send me Google the address and like a Google image and like,
Oh, wow.
and so sometimes I would go on like Google Earth and like just like snapshot like the plot of the front yard or something, and like you can get a rough scale, and like it didn't need to be perfect. Or I just look off of photos and be like, hey, I'm roughly thinking we should do something like this, and then they would have a contractor in that area that would help facilitate the project with Chris and I.
Mm-hmm.
So we would collaborate with that said contractor, and then they would implement our ideas, or sometimes they'd bring some of their own ideas. Be like, hey, I got a bunch of this stuff. I'm like, great, let's use it. Or like, no, I don't like that.
Okay, I kind of wonder because it seemed to me like, and I understand that like television wise, things get framed in a certain way because it works really good for flow and kind of the feel of the show and everything. But sort of watching and kind of taking a step back and thinking about it, I sort of feel like, there's part of me that kind of doubts that they're rolling up, looking at a house for the first time, and 10 minutes later have a plan of exactly how they want to do everything. And the next day dump trucks are rolling in, and there had to be some level of pre-planning to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it depends on the show. Like Yard Crashers, if you're familiar with that, like they literally send people in there or like the host in there, and they meet people like naturally, which is super cool. But I don't know their full production, how they do it, but um it would be, yeah, sure, it'd be nice if it was like all perfect, but it doesn't make any financial sense.
Right.
So oftentimes, yeah, we'll like meet them, and then the scheduling is we would usually film like 2 households at a time, so that we would be at one house for a day or two and then bounce over to the next house and then bounce back, and that kind of allows things to happen because it happens really quick. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Because that one, that's not all Southern California. Like, because for
most of that was
example,
most of that was on the East Coast in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and Florida.
okay, I thought I remember one of them was in Pennsylvania. That was the first time I caught on because the previous show, I Hate My Yard, that was pretty much all Southern California, wasn't it?
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah.
We like to make it feel like it was anywhere, but it was very much Southern California.
When you're staring outside here in Illinois at the -10-degree weather, and there's a house that could be anywhere, but you see palm trees in the distance, you're like, okay,
Yeah. Nope. Yeah. That's your boy.
So what and I realize this is an extremely broad question, but are there certain kind of, when you're looking at something like this, you're doing a house or you're designing, whether it's for a show or just for a client, do you have particular design elements that you sort of favor over other ones, or things that you tend to gravitate towards?
I like designs that make sense. I would say I feel like things need to have meaning to me, and that either means that they're functional or they aesthetically make sense, or just layout wise makes the space feel better.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would function is super important in terms of like spatial layout, and then aesthetic is also important. I think less is more typically, but I don't like to get stuck in one category. Like I very much love a cottage garden or something that's very eclectic, but generally the less clutter and the less stuff, the better the overall landscape feels.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So yeah,
got
like yeah, things that like I think are just poor design choices are if you put a bunch of different plants in like one area and it's just like a potpourri of things, you're like, where do I even look? It can look messy. Or like when people have like 500 pots in their like one area and they're like, I love all my plants. I'm like, just put them in the ground.
it.
It just looks like Like you're storing things in your yard.
Yeah.
Better to like pick a few, and like people don't realize it's like you just accumulate it. And like I'm
Yeah.
not one to speak. Like my room is like I'm not gonna show you, but I know how it should look though.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely something to be said for less is more. There are times I think we've all seen those yards that are just, they're a disaster. Not that anything there is necessarily bad or rotted, but just so much clutter and so much like packed into one area that it's, I remember doing landscaping and there were times where, of course, we weren't a production company, but we'd literally get customers who would call and be like, for some reason, I just hate my backyard. And you'd look at it and be like, well, back up a dumpster. We can fix half of it.
Yeah, that's like the first thing. Like, yeah, I tell people do is just clear out the yard of clutter because it's a great place to store things.
Mm-hmm.
It just ends up collecting a lot.
Yeah, it starts off as pots, and then before you know it, it's a '72 Chevy, and then it stuff snowballs, and before you know it, you're not on Law and Order, you're on Hoarders. So have you guys run into production-wise? Have you guys run into a lot of problems with the whole COVID pandemic we have going on?
Oh yeah, we're not filming. We haven't been filming for a while for that one, but it kind of depends on each production company.
Mm-hmm. The remarkable thing is that we had talked before the podcast. I did an episode of not too long ago with Annie Briggs, and that was a conversation her and I were having because she was in the process this summer had it in the works to build a barn. And then right when she got started, they ran into all kinds of material supply issues because of coronavirus. And we even ran into that here. I was so excited this summer. I was finally going to install the new fence I always wanted in. You sit there and you do the math, and I figured, well, I'm going to need 156 boards to do this. And every time I go down to the only lumber place in this county, and on any given day, they might have 12. And maybe we'll get more in next Tuesday. And then you go next Tuesday and they have 5 left. And it was just, so what should have been a weekend job turned into like a 4-month just constantly waiting and hoping and praying that lumber will come in sometime.
Were you not able to order the specific amount and have them bring it in?
I could have, but it always got to be the difference between because unfortunately like I said, the only place that we have here that carries lumber, their delivery charges are outrageous, and for somebody who has a pickup truck who can just say, oh yeah, I'll run down there and cram as many as in my truck as I can and drive it back and we'll put them up, and I don't mind making trips all day long. But even then there was no way even through them at that time to be able to special order it. There's no way I could say, hey, I need X amount, can you get that in? And they'll be like, whatever comes on the truck next week is what comes in. It's first come, first serve. So good luck.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes you really start looking at all like the scrap lumber. You're like, wow, this has a lot of value. I had a big scrap pile in my yard, and I was just letting friends like take it, do something. Now I'm like, I better hang on to this. I'm not gonna be able to build anything. Yeah, well, that and the prices have gone up. Yeah, my bike got stolen, and I was trying to find a replacement. And I went to the store, and they're like, well, we have 2 bikes left, but they're extra small frames. And I'm like, I'm a normal, that's not the right word, average size person. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. And I'm like, well, surely I can just order a bike my size. And they're like, we're not taking any orders because we don't even know, like, manufacturing's so far behind. We don't even know what's going to be available.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Your bike got stolen.
Yeah, they broke my car window and everything.
What?
No.
Was this at your house or elsewhere?
In front of my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know. It was a bummer. Yeah, you don't leave your bike in your car, apparently. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a nicer bike than what I had before.
Well, there you go. It was just a sign. It was just a sign from the cosmos that it was time for a better bike.
Yeah, so.
Excuse me. So you wrote a book, Big Impact Landscaping 28 DIY projects you can do on a budget. If you were to, I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this where it sounds okay. I guess I would say if you were going to give advice to people who are brand new homeowners who wanted to spruce some stuff up and make stuff look nice, but weren't dealing with the biggest budget in the world.
We're not dealing with the biggest budget.
Yeah.
Sure.
What would you say?
So actually, I come across this all the time, and I think it's great. I don't think that I think having a nice yard or a garden is a privilege. Like, it's not something that's just granted to you because you have a home. Like, it takes work and it takes thought and it takes energy, and you can hire that out or you could do it yourself. So I don't think that I compare it to like going to a restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you're going to spend like what, 10 times more on food that you could probably just make yourself. But and that's fair because you're paying the staff, you're paying the rent, you're paying like the markups of all that food getting there. And the same thing with landscaping. When you pay a contractor to come in there, like, they're paying their employees, they're paying their insurance, they're paying all this. So the price you're paying for somebody to do something for you is, it's significantly, sure, I do think it's fair, than if you just did it yourself. So if you don't have a big budget, but you have the desire, that's where the weekend warriors come in. And I think that people are perfectly capable of bringing it together. Of course, people have different skill sets. So, I mean, yeah, obviously some things you need skilled labor and you can't, but I feel like I've met plenty of people that have like fully tackled like hardscape and stuff like that, and like watched YouTube and figured out how to do things at a cheaper rate. And then some people are like, I might not have the biggest budget, but I'd still rather hire that out. I'm like, go you, because you're keeping us employed.
Yeah.
uh, so I think when your budget is more limited, I think it's more important to be more aware of how to plan your space ahead of time and either invest in a designer ahead of time or figure out a layout somewhat yourself so you don't end up with a yard that's really not thought through. So figuring out the overall plan and then tackling them. Like, I'll have clients be like, okay, you need your furniture. Well, it's August. Wait till Black Friday and then go buy all your furniture then.
Right.
But you know the layout of the space and you know what you need. So it allows you to kind of like plan ahead in those things, or even hiring contractors in the off season to do things can also be helpful because there's less competition. There's less work available to them, so they're more willing to work at maybe a lower rate. It kind of depends on the industry and where you're at. It just depends on how hands-on people want to be. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with like hiring it out to have somebody come and do something for you. But I think the best situation is when the homeowners are somewhat involved.
Well, especially a lot of times it's good for, just like you said, the skill set. If you don't have a lot of background in it, or if it's your first time ever even, I've known this people before who, they lived most of their entire lives in an apartment, even growing up. And then, they get married and they buy their first house. It's their first time ever having a yard. And they're just like, I want it to look good, but I have no idea what to do. It's like having a blank canvas and saying, well, I want the Mona Lisa, but I've never picked up a paintbrush before. How do I even, So a lot of times I think just having a professional take a look at it, can make a really big difference.
The thing with, I think absolutely having a designer come and give some fresh eyes to a space and like help you utilize it best. Like, a lot of designers will do consultations where they just share ideas, and you'll find some people that do it free, but I think if you're doing like a paid consultation, it's more of an exchange of like information and whatever. Like, I'm here, let me give you ideas right on the spot. That's what I do, at least. But everyone has a different business model. And I think probably the biggest thing with like landscaping is very different than like the interior, because you design your inside and like everyone knows how to keep it going back to where it was. You're like, okay, I have green walls and a couch and the blanket goes here. I fold the blanket, make it look good, get rid of the clutter. That's maintaining your living room, like clean it, The landscape is like, holy shit, this plant grew and now the grass and it's dead over here and like there's too much water now. And like there's so many factors that you have to be involved with your landscape or hire somebody to keep up with it. And so you could spend money installing a landscape, but if you don't figure out how to maintain it, you could kind of lose the original thought. I think the best thing that I like to tell my clients is they don't have like a regular gardener, which I don't think you have to. is to quarterly go out there and make sure that you're bringing it back to kind of where it was. And of course, I'm in San Diego. It doesn't matter what season. So what you would do in Illinois would be a little bit different in terms of winterizing. But here in America, like we have a really weird relationship with maintenance. Nobody wants to do it. It's like I want everything like perfect and to never change. And I'm like, that's just not realistic.
Mhm.
Where like you go to England and like gardening and maintaining your garden is a lifestyle.
Mhm.
There's no expectation that like it's going to be perfect all the time. It's something that they are doing weekly, like out there just picking things or trimming things. They're involved. They're touching their time. It's like this look good, and I expect you to stay that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it's just like you were saying, well, like, people think, just like the interior, like, well, I straightened the couch and folded the blanket. Why is 3 months later, does this look like it's all falling apart again? That's
yeah,
always, that's the biggest thing, all the trimming and everything that does. And I always get amazed. It's kind of off on a side tangent, but being the huge baseball fan that I am and watching anytime I'd go to a baseball game, I'm a huge Cubs fan. I'd go to Wrigley Field in Chicago, and you'd see those
hmm
grounds crews guys out there, before and after every game, and just making everything look absolutely perfect. And I think to
yeah,
myself, God, the amount of work it would take to maintain a field like that, especially with Wrigley, where you're dealing with the ivy on top of it and not just the grass, where everything needs to be trimmed, and but I agree with you. I think that's a really big point, how important the maintenance is to all that kind of stuff. Um, what
yeah.
did I read this correctly? Do you have chickens? Was that right?
So I have and had. I had chickens.
And then you got hungry, or what happened?
Well, my dog Banjo ate my favorite chicken,
Oh
which
no.
I was super bummed about. I'm like, out of all the chickens, you ate the one that actually like was super cool and would like come in the house and like be like, let you hold it. And I'm like, why that one? And so the rest of the chickens, they're fine. But
Hmm.
we ended up recently giving them away because I just traveling too much and just not keeping up. And now that I didn't have my favorite chicken, like the connection was lost.
Mm, poor Banjo. What kind of dog is Banjo?
Oh, he's a mutt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a mutt. He's gingery color with blue eyes. He's actually a very handsome dog, but he's very shy. And it's funny because I do put him on my social. And sometimes people will like meet him and they'll be like, "Oh, Banjo," and he'll be like, "Who are you and why do you want to touch me?" Yeah, he's nice, but he's just like he's not a people dog. He's like, you have to earn my trust. Like you don't like. He's like, it's okay if you pet me, but definitely not doing anything for me.
but has a taste for chicken though.
Oh, he loves the chicken. Yeah.
Does he ever feel guilty, like if you ever give him like a chicken McNugget or something? Does he kind of get this look on his face, like, oh, I
Oh,
remember this. I got in
no,
trouble for this once.
no, not at all.
No.
No,
Okay.
but I don't eat chicken McNuggets. Um, no, but a creepy thing though is chickens will eat chicken. It's gross.
Hmm.
If you drop some or whatever, and they'll just eat anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. A lot of farm animals are that way. You know, God, pigs are the worst. I think pigs are the worst at that.
Oh,
Gosh.
I think pigs. Yeah, pigs can eat anything.
Yeah. And yet then we turn around and eat them. And so, you know, I guess it ends up kind of like a you are what you eat times two in that regard. That's
Yeah.
bizarre. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about that. So, so if we were, so we've talked, and people who follow you on social media and have watched you on DIY Network, they know you as, Sara Bendrick, I Hate My Yard, Lawn and Order, that stuff. Do you have anything that I guess sort of like you enjoy doing, or hobbies that are completely removed from all that, that maybe even some people would be surprised to be like, oh, really? That's cool.
Sure. Yeah, I actually I play the guitar and I
Mm,
sing. Although it's super intermittent. Like I could go a year without picking up my guitar, and then I'll play it for 3 months straight, and then yeah, like I would say my average is I'll play it a few times a year. It's kind of sad.
mhm.
I wish I would do it more. And at this point, like it's like I've known these songs for like 10 years, and I just keep playing the same songs, and I should learn a new one. Although I did learn what's that Elvis Presley song? Falling in Love with You. I learned that for my friend's wedding, and that was I played it for them coming up, and that was really nice.
Whoa,
I enjoyed doing that.
that's cool. How do you get more nervous doing that or hosting a TV show?
You know, I actually think that's what allowed me to be decent at hosting a TV show. Like, I've never been like some big musician or anything, but back like in high school and right out of high school, I would force myself to do open mics, and I would prep myself by when I was playing by myself, and I'd close my eyes and just imagine everybody looking at me. So I'd be like, okay, I'm nervous. Everyone's looking at me. It's okay. And then so by the time I actually did it, I'm like, oh, this is just what I practiced. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing is going back to being present and just being focused on what you're actually doing. And I think like when it comes to like being on camera, it's the same thing. It's like if you think about the camera like filming you and making mistakes and stuff like that, like your energy's gonna read that way. Where if you are just like, oh, I'm being present and I'm interacting with these people, and somebody's standing there with a camera, but it doesn't matter. And like being comfortable that, especially at this point, knowing like if I do make an ass out of myself, either they're going to put it in there, it's going to make good TV, or they're going to take it out and make me look like that.
So either way, it's bonus, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's safe being like with a network like HGTV or DIY, because like they want you to be seen in a good light. It's not like, you know, FX or like housewife, like those housewife shows where they're like, oh damn, this is good. Oh, she looks like an idiot. You know, like they're always going with the intention of they don't mind making it funny, but
right, yeah,
they're not going to present you as an idiot.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the difference between a show that makes money off of people looking like idiots versus, you know, I guess somebody looking like an idiot occasionally to sort of humanize them on TV, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, you know, it depends. And then, you know, editor notes are different for all, depending on who you have, like what type of energy they want. My first show, I Hate My Yard, I guess I laughed too much and they're like, started cutting me.
Come on.
They wanted me to be more serious. Those are just stylistic choices that happen in editing. Like, I'm not really a part of that. And then, you know, like another show, they're like, oh, we like that. So, and it also kind of depends on like the times too. I think when I first started, they really wanted like this tough, like serious, like business kind of like badass woman. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, can I be goofy too?
Right. Yeah, that's funny. So what kind of music do you do? What kind of music do you play?
Surprisingly, I have a pretty good Shakira, like, what do they call that? Like, they're like, oh, I don't even want to try it now because I'm like, you know, like the kind of depth that she has. Like, I can do like the mashed potato in the throat kind of singing.
Oh, mashed potato in the throat. I've never heard it called that, but that makes a lot of sense.
My friend's like, Shakira sounds like she's singing with mashed potatoes in her throat. I'm like, I can do that. That, or I grew up like singing like Jewel, so kind of like folksy lady shit.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. What would you consider to be like your if we're as long as we're going to be off on this off in the weeds on this, we might as well do it. What would you consider to be like your top like favorite musical acts?
Oh, well, if you asked me when I was like 14, it would have been Hanson.
Well.
I should have put that in there, but well, I was obsessed. My favorite musical acts are, I love this guy, Jackie Green. He is like Americana, like folksy, bluesy kind of guy out of, I think Chino, which is Northern California. And he's like super famous, like in the underground, like not the like radio played, but he has like a huge following. He used to open for the Grateful Dead. A lot of respect for this guy, but he just never, I think because he's like bounced between genres a little too much, it's hard to like peg him in one.
Yeah.
So he's like one of those guys that are like super popular, like people know of him, but he's not like radio played. Love his music. And then I'm a sucker for Sarah Bareilles. Like if I was a singer, and by the way, her name is Sarah Beth too.
Oh, okay.
With Bendrick. So I'm like, oh, well, if I was going to be a singer, I'd just try and do what she was. Not that I'm saying I'm like her level, but I totally like really love her music.
How come we never get any of that on social media?
Every once in a while, like once a year or so, I might sprinkle something in a story or like somewhere in a post. I think earlier this year, oh, another person I really love, Patsy Cline. Um, I was like singing in the car and I'm like, feeling this. So I kept posting a little bit of like crazy, and that was fun. It was, I just love how much fluidity and highs and lows that she plays with, which I really feel like it's lost in this generation in a way, because there's so many other noises and bells and whistles that you can do where like,
Yeah.
oh, like she was just, it was fun to like hear how her voice floats around. Are you much of a musician or music
Uh,
lover?
yeah. When I'm driving alone in my car, I'm Freddie Mercury. When anybody else is around, I sound like, when I'm singing, my wife calls it what it sounds like when a giraffe is being stabbed to death. So that's kind of where we're at, I guess. No, I've been a drummer in a few different
Wait, but
bands. It's
what?
been a long time, but
Why a giraffe?
I don't know. I think she was just trying to describe something that would have a really long neck and therefore have a really long air pipe to get out the most god awful sound in the world. That's the only thing I can come up with. That's why she chose giraffe. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I think we need that though. I think we need a Sarah Bendrick like Instagram live acoustic show or something. I think that'd be pretty awesome.
I mean, I think it would be awesome for some people, but it is interesting with like social media. Like if you veer too far off of like what people are following you for, you get people unfollowing you. Um, which is fine. Like it's not the end of the world. But the yeah, I don't mind sprinkling it in. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, you're
But I
gonna
also
think
like, I haven't picked up my guitar in a long time, and I'm
it.
not even that great of a guitar player. I'm probably a better singer than, oh, I definitely am a better singer than a guitar player because my guitar skill levels are pretty. I can play chords, and some picking that I've practiced over many years.
Yeah. Well, if you went on Instagram or Facebook Live or whatever and did a live stream of you doing music and anybody left you over it, forget them. Like that, you don't need that negativity in your life anyway. Like goodbye,
Yeah.
people. Like
No,
you
I
got a
don't
problem with
know.
music? What the heck?
I don't know if people would really leave me for like on a
Right.
story or in like a live. I think people choose to go there more easily. Where if I had put mix into my, like, here's how you do irrigation or here's how you cut stone or something, and then like here's me singing a song, la la. It's more like what? I
That
think
is,
if it mixes in naturally, sure, why not?
yeah, that is kind of that you brought that up though, because that is kind of the bizarre thing about social media nowadays, which is sort of like you get pegged into like this role.
Hmm.
And just like you said, if you kind of veer out of that, what people have placed you in, it kind of causes people problems.
Yeah,
I don't
I
entirely
actually,
understand it, but it's totally true.
yeah, I actually think that I need to split my, and might even do two different accounts, because in landscaping there's like the hardscape and the softscape, and often I'll like combine those, but at the same time I used to do these things called plant talks where I would just be like, oh, this is a gymnosperm versus an angiosperm, like what the hell is that, which I very much enjoyed, or like this one tree, or like jasmine, trichulospermum jasminioides, what is this? That type of stuff. That's a very different audience than people are like concrete, yeah.
I want the
uh,
rocks, man.
yeah, and so I think it's you, when you mix two things that are, to me they're all in the same, it's landscaping, but they're kind of very different interests. And so I was finding by mixing too much of that in my page that like my plant people are like, I don't want to learn about this stone that you're installing, like I'm interested in plants, and
Mhm.
vice versa. So I've kind of shied away from doing too much like plant heavy content, even though I really enjoy it. And I'm thinking I might either just do a separate page. Might totally inappropriate. By the way, I have very inappropriate humor.
You're on
But
the
one of
right
my
show.
friends was suggesting that. Where should I go? What's she suggesting I call it? Like wet my planties. Like I would 100% do that, but I already have enough creeps following me. I don't even want.
If that isn't the greatest name for a YouTube channel, I don't know what is.
I
Like,
know.
that would just break the internet. That's so perfect.
And then, so I haven't completely written it off, and I have a few of these that are like totally inappropriate. Like, I don't know. I have no shame. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, what sponsor or brand is gonna get behind Wet My Planties? Like, maybe, maybe it's not an issue, and probably it's not an issue at all.
Yeah.
But
we could probably get some.
I actually think most people would still be like, yeah, sure. Like if you're influential and people are following you and love it, like, and it's naturally you, which it definitely is me. There's no shame in that.
Right.
But it does kind of polarize you. And I've always had this, like, trying to figure out the balance between being a woman in construction, not trying to overly sexualize myself, and then like not, of course, like asking for it. I mean, to me, like, I don't know, I kind of have crude humor. And like with my friends, that's one thing, but like with like some, percentage of the audience, does it kind of encourage the wrong kind of comments? And to me, like, I have a thick skin. I'm not worried about it, but I also realize that, like, I'm representing more than just myself. I haven't fully thought through this. Like, in one hand, I'm like, who really cares? Like, if I have dirty, inappropriate humor, like, that's funny to me. That's authentic to me. At the same time, am I just building a page for, like, thirsty, like, dudes that are like
Yeah, I could gosh, I could definitely see that. Oh my Lord. Yeah, you probably get a lot of those creepers, don't you?
Yes and no. I would say the majority of people that actually interact and comment on my posts are pretty appropriate. And if somebody's really inappropriate, like, other people will call them out, which is awesome. Oh, so that kind of keeps me from having to do the dirty work. But on the DM section, you'll get a variety of people, like, that are, it's usually more people. I think it's like dudes just shooting their shot, and they've probably like copied and pasted this message to 100 different women that they're following. So it's kind of like, whatever. And then every once in a while you get like a super random one. Like, I posted this in my story the other day. Somebody wrote me like, hey, if you're into butt smell fantasies, let me know. Right?
Like, what is a butt smell fantasy? Did it just like fart sniffing? Is this?
I have no idea. And then, so like, that's the whole message. And then it's like, their profile with their name, and like in their profile image, he's like clearly with his wife or girlfriend or something.
What?
And I'm just, but this happens all the time. Like, half the times guys write like inappropriate stuff. Like, they have a woman in their profile photo. And I'm just like, this can't work for you. One, the message is terrible, but two, you're like, who's this working on?
That always it sounds weird, but I always end up thinking about movies, like really romantic movies, and then I think to myself, would there be a situation where a couple is standing there at their 50th wedding anniversary in front of all their family and friends and having a toast and being like, I never thought I'd find anyone till he sent me that DM, and right away I knew he was the one.
Oh, that's
like,
so
how do people think a relationship's going to start that way? Like, oh, I'll be some rando and just DM some filthy thing, and that's going to start the world on fire or something.
Although I will say I have dated somebody from social media.
Oh, really? Really? I don't even know if I should ask about that, because I feel like it's like, no, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. Facebook or Instagram? That's the most important. Twitter.
I'm not gonna share that because I don't want to encourage too many random messages.
Too late now. You already said you did. So yeah, that DM box is gonna be flooded in 2 days. I'm telling you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What do I want to say about this, right?
I'm still off on what was it? Butt sniffing fantasy? Yeah. Is that what he called it?
It was a butt smell. It was
But
butt smell fantasy.
but smell fantasy.
I did Google it. Nothing showed up.
Oh, well. I'm sure there's a subreddit for it somewhere.
Totally, totally.
That is God,
Yeah.
that is bizarre stuff. Some of the and you know, it's weird, like I've known it was out there, that there are people out there who do this kind of stuff. But I guess for whatever reason, I never gave it a whole lot of thought until I had a daughter, which is a guy
Okay.
change that changes everything. Because then you're like,
Okay.
what kind of wackos is she going to have to deal with? And then
Yeah.
number two, once I started doing this podcast and I started having female guests on, we began discussing this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like rampant, isn't it? It's like all over the place. I used to think like every once in a while there was just some creepo who had too much to drink or something and wanted to talk about butt smelling fantasies. But apparently this is like an issue, like ongoing, like every female, every day, this stuff is just pouring out of the internet.
Yeah, it was like to me, like I know that some people get offended. Like to me, it's kind of part of the territory in my mind, and I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not supporting it or defending it, but for the most part, most of the people that are either trying to get my attention, like for non-landscape stuff, like most of them are well-intentioned, or they're just like, hey, like I think they're genuine in their own mind, and some of them are like kind of sweet in a way, really. And then there's just some that I think are like so their level of like interaction with just people in general is probably limited, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just like, I get it. You don't get how this works.
Right. Now, do you think those people are like, some of them are legitimately shooting a shot, or is it just, I'm going to say something outrageous and it'll at least get noticed, you know?
Mm, I would say it's a mixture, really. I think it's a mixture. There's like one person who commented a few times and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you. They're like, he commented on my post and he was like, said something about like, I have a big crush on you or something or like that. And I was just like, oh, thanks, or like something, whatever, like innocent.
Hmm.
And then he's like, I can't believe you wrote me back. I'm going to tell all my friends that you're my wife or my girlfriend. I'm like, whatever, bro. But it was playful. And like, I was like, whatever. And like,
Yeah.
and that person still every once I don't remember his name, sorry if you're listening. There's too many people that message, but I know there's somebody that reoccurrently like just jokes like, oh, it's my girlfriend. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. And then
That's,
eventually you stop writing him back and he stole your bike. He was so mad.
no, no, no. This is actually just in my posts and stuff like that. Like
That
yeah.
didn't actually happen, guy out there. We're not picking on you. It's
No,
just,
no, no. Yeah, like, but I would say for the most part, like a lot of them are sweet, and even some guys actually like write and are kind of aware of it in a weird way. And I don't read all like them if it's not like work related. A lot of times I just like scroll past. Like I don't interact with probably if it's not work related. Like 90% of the comments I just like scroll past.
mhm.
Um, but overall, like I feel like the majority of people are genuinely trying to be they have good intentions.
Mhm.
And then you just have a few weirdos here and there, so
Well, I feel like on a more serious note, that's 100% what it is we're dealing right now with social media. I think 95 to 99% of the people you interact with are really, really positive experiences. But it's just for some reason it's the way the human brain works. Every once in a while, that one that's somebody who's either inappropriate or is a jerk, for some reason that's the one that's going to stick in your brain the rest of the day. That's the
yeah.
one that all day long you're going to be like, "Oh, I can't believe that guy." Like, never mind the fact the multitudes of people who were sweet and uplifting and nice and said really, really great, wonderful things.
Yeah.
That one you stubbed your toe on is just going to grind you, you
Yeah,
know?
every once in a while, like if somebody like everyone's gonna have some trolls, but surprisingly, like when you people are following you, like you create this little bubble of protection. And for somebody like myself that's not polarizing, like I'm, I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about anything that people could, it's either like you like the flower or you don't, like,
Yeah.
you know, um, or you like it's But at the same time, like when you move outside of that bubble, like sometimes I've done branded content where like they just promote it to probably hundreds of thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and these people have no relation to you. They have no idea who you are. They're like, who's this dumb broad, like talking about this stuff? Like the comments become a lot more crude.
Oh
And
yeah.
in a way, I kind of don't mind it. And I'm not saying like I encourage, but it's a little dose of reality. Like we are really sheltered in our own little bubble when we post things, and people are like, you're wonderful, you're great. And then you like goes out to the wider audience. And some people are still like, you're wonderful, you're great. And some people are like, this is shit. I don't like
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, you're entitled to your opinion.
Right. Well,
You
first
could
of
be
all,
nicer about delivering it.
well, yeah, and I guess that ends up sort of like the pathway, because if somebody is following you on, on any of the platforms, it's because they searched you out because they were, interested in you ahead of time.
Yeah.
Whereas when they're just scrolling through their feed and here's some person that they've never seen before promoting something, they're just like, who the hell is that? Who
Yeah.
is this for? But then I think to myself, like, how miserable are you to like take time out of your life to comment?
Yeah.
You're shit. I don't know who you are. I know nothing about you. You could be Mother Teresa, but right now you irritate my eyeballs. Ergo, I have to write a comment.
Yeah.
That I don't get at all. It's just
Yeah. There was some, how some accounts just take a bunch of other people's stuff and like put it like cool, like whatever action shots or whatever. Somebody took one of my projects where I was laying out a bunch of bricks and I had broken a bunch of them to create like this mosaic path. And in my little world, like a lot of people really liked it. And then there's this one guy who's like, some people would just do anything for attention. Like, this is garbage. Like, this isn't how you do it. And I was just like, yeah, you can have that opinion. And I thought about writing back, and I don't know if I did or not, but I think I might have. And I was just like, this project actually won, and a California contractor's it won first place. And I'm like, so you might say I don't know what I'm doing, but the contractor's board got behind it and gave me first place. I don't know. Maybe it's you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
yeah. So shut the hell up, random guy.
I mean, but at the same time, like it's not for everybody, and that's okay too. But I'm like, don't tell me I don't know what I'm doing. Half the time I don't, but that's okay.
Right.
People don't even know that.
But in this case, I actually did know what I was talking about. So, well, you get those miserable people who just like, oh, I could do better than that. Well, then do better than that. But in the meantime, leave me the heck alone.
Yeah, it's fine. Like so far, like I don't feel like I try not to make it my world.
Mm-hmm.
It is a part of it, although it is scarily becoming a bigger and bigger part, and I do kind of worry about how much, especially the younger generation, is just spending their time there. And I spend a lot of time on social media because it's part of my business at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But and I've made wonderful connections, like meeting Anne of all trades. I'm online.
Yeah.
I've met so many like wonderful like women builders, and like when people are like, wow, I don't know many female contractors, I'm like, I know a ton. And I would if it hadn't been for Instagram, really.
Yeah.
So it has its pros and cons.
Well, the next generations will figure it out. Right now, I think, I hear a lot of people talk about kind of that, but when it comes to the internet and where we're at right now, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It is what it is, and it's out there, and it'll kind of be for hopefully generations after us to figure out a good, I guess, an ethical and fun way to sort of wield it. And it's a tool, and it's brought a lot of really, really great things to the world. And unfortunately, there are underbellies of it that like to smell butts, and that's that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's yeah. Oh, for the most part, it's been like a blessing in my life in terms of my career and stuff like that. And in fact, although like being on television is great, like I have more people recognize me off my social media because that's like a constant feed that they're seeing me once a week. Where at TV, I have no control over like how often people see you, but on social media, you become kind of part of somebody's life in an odd way.
Yeah, that is, and that's kind of the interesting thing that I had loved the most about doing this and doing this podcast is that I felt like over the course of years on social media, you sort of develop your own little bubble. your own sort of biosphere, people that you follow of the various interests that you have. And getting to do the podcast ended up being this really, really fun way for me to get to talk to people. Like I got to, excuse me, I got to interview Ann of all trades. I've been following you on social media for years. And so now to get to like sit down and it's like, for years, every day I'd scroll through, Instagram and Facebook and be like, oh, Sara posted this. Oh, that's cool. And then now getting to sit and actually do a podcast with you is really, really cool. Would never be able to do that without the internet. Would never be able to,
Not at all. Like, yeah, it is, an awesome way to really connect.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, I feel like I've taken up a good chunk of your time. I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. And as we go out, if there's anything you'd like to say in general, or to the people, or to butt sniffing guy if he's listening.
Poor guy. He's probably well. No comment. I don't. Yeah.
All right.
No, I mean, I'm super grateful for the experience I've had and that people want to follow along. And I hope that I can keep bringing good content that's worthwhile. It's important for me to bring value, I think, and have a good balance of, just presenting myself, but also presenting stuff that's worth actually listening to.
Right. Well, and the thing that I love about you and a lot of the stuff you post is that it always has a lot of energy and it always has a lot of passion. And it's that kind of stuff I think is really, really important right now. Anything where you can feel good about getting out and doing something. Right now it sucks and it's kind of depressing because it makes me want to go outside and do work and it's like 30 degrees outside. So I'm just going to stare at a brown yard until April comes and then I'll be ready to go,
Go put your Carhartt on, get out there.
Right.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. It's funny. There's this great podcast about Dolly Parton I can't remember the guy's name who did it. And I listened to that and I was like, oh my God, I want to be Dolly Parton. Like not her exactly, but like, she's a great unifier. Like she's super accepting of people and just a positive energy. And I'm like, whenever I kind of feel like I'm like, not sure, like losing my way, I'm like, yeah, just positivity. And like, I'm generally positive, but accepting the people you agree with and the ones you don't as well, I think is important. Especially in these times right now.
Very much so. Yeah. And that's, if there's a mantra that I think America should use going forward, it would be, what would Dolly Parton do?
Oh my God, I love that.
I love that. I'm getting t-shirts made in a tattoo, like immediately. I like that though. That's a good message.
Yes. What would Dolly Parton, it's so true. Like, yeah, they're talking about like how they have like LGBT people, nuns, like cowboys and like, little high school girls, like everybody loves her.
Right.
She unifies beyond people's like stereotypes.
Yeah, one of those people who just kind of transcended everything and is just, I think even at times throughout her life, she threw people off by how accepting she was. Like people just thought she would just be another country singer and just be that. And instead she's like, oh no, they're cool. They're totally cool. Yeah. They buy tickets to my show just like anybody else. So,
Yeah, totally.
Amen to that.
Well, great. This was a lot of fun. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sara Bendrick. Follow her, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the show. Gosh, I can't wait for more of the show. Law and Order with Chris Lambton. Check that out on DIY Network. And once again, Sara, thank you so much. Appreciate you giving me your time, and we'll talk to you again sometime.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.